All right. Welcome back. Agape Love Part 2.
Yes. So last time me and Guy were proposing, and I will repeat those proposals, and then Sandra will do her own proposal on agape as a virtue. So my proposal was this: agape, enacted as a human virtue, is a mediation of the divine, all-embracing immediacy towards vulnerability. And Guy's proposal was agape is the participatory knowing and the coming into conformity through surrendering to the unconditionality of the all-embracing. And we start with a very simple question. Sandra, what is agape?
As a virtue. Yeah. Agape, comma, enacted as virtue, comma. Is the complete surrender of the self, I suppose, to truth, capital T, in the service of other. Wait a minute. For the redemption of the world. Okay, let's start there.
Can I just repeat? Agape, enacted as virtue, is the complete surrender of the self to truth in service of other. I didn't catch what you said there.
For the redemption of the world.
So this in service of others for the okay.
Yeah, in service of others and for the redemption of the world, I think. Yeah. Let's start with that.
And for the redemption of the world. Okay, yeah. Very good. So
when I would say complete and unconditional surrender of the self, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask you about that because I mean we had surrender as a virtue, I think, and that trait is very striking. So what is exactly the act, let's say, in surrendering? How does it connect to agape for you?
Agape is not, does not derive from the self, cannot derive from me, cannot derive from my limited self. Agape is so much vaster than myself. So yeah, so sorry, I lost the question there.
No, that's good.
Okay.
I'm just perhaps curious in when we surrender to that which is, let's say, so much vaster, so much more encompassing than our limited self. So when I surrender, how does that connect to agape?
Well, that's the thing, because I don't, the act of surrender comes with no conditions. So not even any conditions of connection. I'll surrender if I can connect to you. The act of surrender is complete and unconditional. It's simply an act, the act of surrender, of acknowledging that I don't know. Yeah, okay. It's that complete surrender of anything, including expectations of connection.
So complete surrendering. Okay.
And how does one do that? Like that is, that's not, I can't, there's no formula for this. There's no manual for this. It's just that this is the way it is. That surrender is essential for agape to be in the world. There's no how-to book. There's no magic bullet. There's no self-help book. There's nothing. It's just what I think every individual has to realize or work out or find for themselves. Yeah.
So then in what you said, and there's a trait, let's say, of agape that is also highly individual, highly maybe individual is not the best word, but very personal, perhaps. That's very personal. Every one of us has to
work out,
has to learn this in his or her own way. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why the second part is for the what did I say? Something about for the
so complete and unconditional surrender of the self to truth with capital T, in service of others and for the redemption of the world.
Yeah, that's right. Because the way in which agape itself enacts itself is through the individual, but then that spreads out through their enactment of that virtue to allow others to find their own way as well. Yeah, so there's a movement there.
Yeah, just before you closed your eyes and you made really a big circle when you said agape, and now you just even said there's a movement. perhaps I'm curious how, when we surrender, what's going on with this movement that's so encompassing, so vast.
So as I'm seeing it, my individual responsibility to enter into this cosmic movement of agape, my individual responsibility is to surrender myself, my self notions, my delusions, my, all the way in which my personal structure creates delusion, which I take for real. Okay, so I have to make the choice to surrender that and orient myself towards whatever I don't know. I don't know because I've surrendered. In order for that grand movement of agape to start moving through me and out into the world. Yeah. It's that movement. So the virtue as a personal, I have to orient myself to practicing that virtue in that way. But all I can really do is to relinquish myself. Right? Yeah. And I think I'm emphasizing that because I don't see true agape as something that, well, it certainly doesn't derive from myself. It's certainly not, Christian charity sort of stuff, all that. It's really beyond any individual. It is the real truth of that is only enacted through individual.
So what I saw was a movement that is going through the world. So this is the big circle, and then but also deeply personal, going through us. But somehow that this surrendering, this relinquishing, this letting go is like, it's like, I don't know, the engine for this movement. So this movement can move, enact itself. And that's perhaps also wherein the virtue then lies.
I think too, because the truth is the truth. It's not a truth just because I've said it. The truth is the truth. And agape is always moving the world, always. My delusion is that it's my delusion that it's not, but it's always tapping at my window, always tapping at my window. And, and so I can either, no, I don't hear that, or maybe, or answer, like all these, answer, all these images that we have that are in our culture. Hint of real, like really universal truth. So I'm aware that I'm using language that is part of our culture, but I mean that's the way it is. But that this is the truth is. The truth is the truth, no matter what language you speak it in, and this, what I'm trying to describe is yeah.
I actually appreciate that what you just did, that you started to, your speech stopped for a moment and you hesitated and I could clearly see, oh, you're really feeling the kind of inadequacy and the insufficiency of all our words, our attempts of speaking, when it comes to this universal truth that is beyond all conceptions, all words, all ideas that are floating in culture. So I really just want to say that enactment itself, that you, in that moment, this short act of surrendering, I really like that. Because then I can see you enact actually what you're saying, trying to say. So
I think also when this stuff is put into language or into the word written, and people can read it and, oh yeah, okay, yeah, well, whatever, and it's kind of like so the real, it's our responsibility, it's our opportunity, everyone, right, to not just read about it, not just talk about it, not just make words about it, but to actually do it. That's the virtue.
Yeah. So
the virtue is, can you read what I said before? Because it has to be taken seriously. It has to be sort of done,
So your proposal was agape enacted as virtue is the complete and unconditional surrender of the self to truth with capital T in service of others and for the redemption of the world.
So in addition to that, I would like to say is taking up the responsibility of complete and utter, of surrendering completely and unconditionally to the truth.
Let's write a new proposal. Agape enacted as, can you say it? Can you?
Yeah, agape enacted as a virtue is the taking up of the responsibility of surrendering completely and unconditionally to truth, capital T. For the redemption of the world. Just put that one.
I'll say it again. Agape enacted as virtue is the taking up of the responsibility of surrendering completely and unconditionally to truth or the redemption of the world.
Yeah.
So
don't ask me what truth is. Well, maybe you should. I don't know.
So maybe I'll just say this, both truth and this other element that we have here at the end, the redemption of the world. I would say that's so both truth and this promise of this redemption, they're both our propositional way of talking, thinking kind of like doesn't capture these things. So that's perhaps why virtue is important and surrender, which is also right. We surrender with our whole being, not just in thinking also. Perhaps the taking up of the responsibility of surrendering completely and unconditionally. So agape itself.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What do you want to say? What sparked that for you just now?
Well, I've been talking about it, enacting it. Yeah. And agape itself is truth. It's truth. Enacted as a virtue is.
Yeah.
That's the you asked about looking for a connection, right?
Yeah.
That's the connection. Is my taking up my responsibility of surrendering to it. That's
But agape itself is truth.
Yeah.
There's of course still the mystery, right? How we do this, this complete and unconditional surrendering, how we actually do that.
Painfully and reluctantly often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suffering. With lots of suffering.
However, when we say it's enacted as virtue, as agapic virtue, let's say, with perhaps an awareness that there is kind of inexhaustible dimension which can redeem or does redeem all of that pain, suffering, and so on.
Not only for ourselves, but for the world, yeah.
We reached last time, we reached the point like this. We didn't count, but I was like on the cusp of saying it. But here it's kind of like here for me, when we take Christ and let's say what happened with the cross, when we take that seriously, because at least for Christianity, that's agape, or since this promise, this redemption was only brought or planted into the world by this event which happened at Easter. And I was kind of like at the cusp of like saying it, because where do we stand now with the presence of Christ in all of this? Because even what you said now, for me, this is like prototypically Christian. Right, the suffering, and then you're on the cross, but there's beyond, and then all of this. I don't have to get into this now, but that's for me just one mystery, perhaps. I don't know how you feel about that. It's kind of like last time and now too, I have like really Christ is coming to my mind. And
after we had, I mean, this is a little bit possibly informed by discussion we had yesterday, but after we had that discussion, I was traveling back in time in my mind to when you are in a desert, there's no living thing, and I've been in this situation where there is no living plant. There is simply the sky and the earth and the horizon, and it's all flat. There is nothing between you and God, and I mean you and the sky, you know, and there is no room for atheism in that experience. There is, the sky is, you know, God, and the God of the Old Testament was this God that was just a bully. I mean, it was just like, you know, there's nothing between me and the sky. I am nothing in this, you know, that like the Old Testament prophets in the deserts could not have any sense that they had any power other than, you know, being stomped on or messed around by this all-powerful God who was, you know, capricious. It could be capricious, but when the message of Jesus was God descends into the slaves, into all the disenfranchised, everybody who has no, he descends into them and says, you are my beloved, you know, I love you. You and I are in love. And that was so revolutionary. That descent was so revolutionary. Now it's in a story about Christ, but it's simply consciousness itself, as John calls it, relevance realization. You know, it's this, I see it as the same thing. Consciousness itself wakes up with this descent and this love. That's the awakening of consciousness. So that we've made a story about it, but this story points to a reality beyond all of our narrations, you know. Yeah.
And I mean, if you, I mean, when you say, you know, agape itself is truth, but both agape and truth point to something that again cannot be captured in words, language, thought, etc. I mean, then that's the only appropriate statement. And it, in the Old Testament, God, I think, says to Moses, says, I am the there, and the there that will be there, something like that.
Yeah.
It's and this is also, this is a statement where all kind of like attempts of speculative metaphysics kind of break. It's a kind of, you know, it's again, we are really, God is beyond, is like absolute nothingness. Is not, we cannot all our attempts of saying it break ultimately. So I just appreciate I appreciate all of that, what you said. Yeah. Sandra, do you have any what is agape?
As a
Here's
virtue?
Here's the original one. See if you want to- here's the
Okay,
original.
we're done?
Agape is enacted as a virtue, is the complete surrender of the self to truth in service to others and for the redemption of the world.
Yeah, and I amended that a bit, Guy, to say is the taking up of the responsibility of surrendering to truth for the redemption of the world.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Mhm.
Are you still happy with that proposal, Sandra?
So far, yeah, let's see where we get with it, because it's Guy's turn again. No, it's your turn, Daniel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, how do we how long do we have to leave, or
Oh, yeah, it's almost 3. Yeah.
so with,
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
what's with the time?
yeah, I have to go at noon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to say I
So-
appreciate that we also were able to draw a distinction between agape as a virtue and agape itself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That I think was also good that we just recalled it in our minds.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll maybe just say a mystery.
Mhm.
The mystery is perhaps then so letting go and loving. That has often been pointed out as a kind of there's a connection there.
Mhm.
So surrendering and loving, letting and loving. Because when you're letting, you're kind of like you make room for an other, so it can freely be, in a sense. And that freedom itself then is also generating
And redemptive.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when I say, for example, there's a flower in my garden also, and I let this flower be. I give it the space and time so it can blossom, can just be itself. That's also kind of love that I'm enacting. Perhaps then I'm still a bit puzzled by perhaps how to surrender. Because again, this is such a as you have said very well, I think it's a very personal issue. We have to learn that by ourselves. Nobody can really teach us how to surrender. We have to. This is very personal task. And then how that surrendering affords the swaying of agape also. This movement of agape that you also, that you did so well in your
Yeah,
talk.
and I would put a plug in, as we were talking earlier, for the ecology of practices. I mean, there have been so many practices that people say, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way, and you guys, you've got it wrong, we're the chosen ones, all that stuff, like it's an ecology, it's a whole ecology, a movement of our, which we see happening now in the world more than we ever have before, I think, which is encouraging.
I have a sense, that personal, like the mystery is like, how do we surrender to this, right? Like it's written, and then Daniel reflected back how personal that is. Like you can't be, no one can tell you how to do it. You have to, it's a personal, I think there's something going on in the, what is personal, right? There's something about agape that's so extraordinarily personal. It makes persons, right? But yet we've probably used the word universal more than we've used it any other of our other dialogues, right?
Yeah.
So there's this kind of interesting thing going on that like the most personal thing is also the most beyond personal in some sense.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that the surrendering is this kind of mutual conformity. right, to something going on about that paradox, right? I would imagine that surrender has something to do with the conformity that's in the very heart of our personalness. I was playing with this because in my walks where, because I was like, okay, oh, that's right. So I made a point to do this because of, you know, agape and thinking about the sense of like, oh yeah, so it's like this sense of that it's not me loving the ultimate, but the ultimate loving me. And so getting that sense, like as I'm walking, I'm just trying to open to that sense of being loved, right? By, and it's so interesting. Well, one is it was strangely easy and awkward at the same time. Because I'm usually like more the Greek, like that's just my orientation. It's like, I'm like, love it, but I'm not really thinking about it loving me somehow. So to do that was awkward, but I could sense it. I could actually sense it. But what was interesting about it is the only way I could sense it is if it was the sense of it, what was loving me was personal, because it's loving me, right? Like it's also loving all things, but from this perspective, it's got this personal quality of loving me, which I couldn't imagine. I tried to do it where I was imagining something as not personal, somehow loving me personal. I couldn't do it. Like I could only do it if I imagined that. Now I wasn't picturing a person. I wasn't. In fact, I had to kind of like not picture anything and just sense being loved. But that being loved was, there was a personal element about that which was loving me, right? And that, I thought that was really, really, really interesting. And so if agape, as John talks about, is what makes persons, right? Then our personhood, my own personalness that I'm walking around with, right, in some sense is somehow connected to this impersonal personalness, right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how in some sense there's also this way where to love an agape is this self-emptying, right? There's that kind of self-emptying, right, of all your conditions, right, for the sake of basically this person becoming person, right? All that's somehow in play, but I can get the sense that it's kind of, there's a conformity going on that has to do with a very central sense of personalhood, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That was a trip. That was really a trip to kind of walk and kind of try to sustain that sense of just being loved, right? By something I can't see, right? It's like it's somehow I had to get the sense of it. It was everywhere and beyond everything, yet somehow personally affecting me personally. I could feel that. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not used to doing that. Well, thinking about things that way.
Wow. Yeah.
So this will be a good leaping off point for our next one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Which will be on Monday, right?
Yes, Monday.
Don't forget.
Oh yeah, Monday. Yeah, Monday. Yeah. Okay. Great. Lovely. Thanks.
All right, you guys.
Okay.
Thank you so much for today.
Yeah.
Bye bye.